let me in?
Sleeping Dogs, a game released in 2012 by the now-defunct United Front Studios, is one of the most high-octane, engaging, and beautiful slices of Hong Kong I've ever gotten to play. The game was received really well, and 2 years after release, it even got a visual update that still holds up to this very day. Despite this, the development studio was closed before the massive potential of the series could be fully realized, and we've unfortunately never gotten anything related to Sleeping Dogs since the closure. And with all the worrying shit higher-ups at Square Enix have been saying and doing, it seems like there's no hope for the future of the series. So, I thought today we could take a look back at everything that makes this game so memorable. Starting with the combat. Sleeping Dogs' combat isn't too complex, but also isn't simple to the point that it's boring. You get your basic light and heavy attacks, a counter, and a grab, from which you can continue to beat your enemies, or drag an enemy to a painful and agonizing environmental attack. Some of these are really brutal. The combat flows super nicely, and there are a good variety of moves to unlock after running a collectathon all throughout the map. And weapons can be found in pretty much any fight during the story missions, including your surroundings. This game also lets you wield firearms once you hit a certain point in the story, but they're still a little sparse, and I think that keeps the combat very fresh. These things pack a punch, and when you slide over things, time slows down a smidge to let you finally place a bullet, or bullets, smack dab into your foes' foreheads, just like John Woo would have wanted. Speaking of sliding, why don't we move on to another aspect of this wonderful game? The movement. Moving in Sleeping Dogs also flows very nicely, trading out the traditional GTA-style jumping for sliding, climbing, and even wall jump mechanics. These are all done by pressing the same button when running straight into a wall or vaultable object. Just like weapons and environmental attacks, the areas you get to dash through during the story missions are littered with bits and pieces to slide and scale over, continuing the trend of keeping gameplay fresh and exciting. But on-foot movement is only half the fun. Sleeping Dogs has a great selection of vehicles to tear up Hong Kong city streets with, letting you choose anything from a moped to a Ferrari. Driving is solid, yet arcadey, and while it doesn't result in the most smooth experience, the game makes up for that by letting you jump from car to car, which can make for a fun little challenge seeing how many cars you can hop into in quick succession, or can be used in an exhilarating chase sequence deep into a mission. And let me tell you, these things look nice. Real nice. You know what else looks real nice? The visuals. For a game that released in 2012 and then got an enhanced edition not but 2 years later, the graphics here are very pleasing to the eye. And while yes, it does show its age in a few places, I think most people would leave this game wanting nothing more. Now, I mentioned that the game got a visual upgrade only 2 years after release. Why? Well, it's simply because development of the game was finishing around the time a new console generation was about to spring up. The same thing happened to competing titles like Watch Dogs and GTA 5, which also got their own changed and expanded releases. As a quick aside, I'd like to mention that for this video I'm using Reshade, but the visuals still do well on their own. There are some instances where the game's frame rate dips, specifically in scripted sequences or in-engine cutscenes. Notably, there seems to be an issue during cutscenes that makes characters that aren't the focus of the scene jitter around. It's a little distracting, but in the long run, it's not a huge deal. Alright, we've been talking about this for a bit too long. How about that story, huh? The story! In the beginning, Sleeping Dogs started as a third entry in the true crime series, which had previously been developed by a completely different studio, and was handled by Activision instead of Square Enix. If you don't know the true crime games, well...
I swear to God, lady. Get the fuck out of the way. Good cop! I'm trying to be a good police officer, for crying out loud. What?
Fortunately, the project shifted hands after Activision's stupidity caused them to lose hope in the project, leaving it open for Square Enix to snatch up. However, they didn't purchase the rights to the true crime licensing, meaning Sleeping Dogs was free from the curse that befell its predecessors, and it could finally become an actual good video game. The story follows Wei Shen, an undercover detective, as he makes his way to the top of a deadly street gang. Conflict is instilled multiple times in the story, both when his colleagues get suspicious and when rivals from within the gang get treacherous. This all culminates in a total meltdown, and gives us an explosive and stylish unfolding of everything around him, resulting in an experience that fits right in with films like Oldboy, The Man from Nowhere, and The Raid. With amazing performances from many talented actors like Will Yun Lee, James Hong, Emma Stone, and more, you won't walk away from this tale disappointed.
Disappointed.
With all the good stuff on the table, we can finally get to what makes me so disappointed when thinking about this game. Seeing as Sleeping Dogs got overall great ratings, achieving 1.5 million sales in the first year alone, you'd think that Square Enix would want another one out as soon as possible. But what came next was disappointing. While fans were expecting news of a sequel after the definitive edition's release, they instead got a look at a completely different kind of game. And according to online comments, it was something nobody wanted.
In September of 2014,
United Front Studios announced Triad Wars, a PC-only MMO game set in the world of Sleeping Dogs. This was a weird announcement, and a little out of place. Firstly, a PC-only game was not going to go over well in a time where games like Grand Theft Auto 5 were thriving, and it was available only on consoles, which an overwhelming majority of players were using around then. And secondly, an MMO game didn't fit the style of Sleeping Dogs at all. It came off more like one of those dumb Crime City mobile games than another masterpiece. The only rationale I can think of for making this instead of a proper sequel is that GTA Online was coming out around the same time, and Square Enix didn't want to lose out on the hype. So, they tried to get their own multiplayer hit running. Problem is, it was far from a hit. The multiplayer aspect was limited to raiding other players' turf, and everything else was handled similarly to Sleeping Dogs. This turned out to hurt the game, however. Seeing that most of the assets were pulled straight from the aforementioned game, it was pretty much just Sleeping Dogs without the sauce. Shut up. Pair that with performance issues, repetitive gameplay, and lackluster MMO mechanics, and it's pretty obvious why people didn't want it. The game was barely out of beta before shutting down in January of 2016. It was only downhill for the franchise after that. In October of 2016, United Front Games closed, with reasoning from Square Enix apparently being that Sleeping Dogs didn't sell to their expectations, which is a load of bullshit. There was a movie in the works, but the last real update we got was a casting announcement in 2017. The rest has just been Donnie Yen assuring us that the movie is definitely still in development, so that's pretty much dead in the water too. Sleeping Dogs regularly goes on sale for $3, and that's on pretty much every platform, so if you still haven't played it, be on the lookout. It'll be some of the best $3 you've ever spent. I will leave you with one last thing to remember, dear viewer. A man who never eats pork buns is never a whole man. Credits!